There is a level of wealth where a mansion simply stops being enough. Think about it. When you are rich enough to buy any house, on any street, in any city on earth, the house itself stops being the flex. So the truly, absurdly rich go looking for something else. Not a bigger home, the whole street, the beach at the end of it, the water around it, the power lines feeding it, and in the most extreme cases, every single person who happens to live there. That is not real estate anymore. That is a kingdom. And today, I am going to take you to the most expensive private island on the planet and introduce you to the man who quietly bought an entire Hawaiian island, the little town sitting on it, and the thousands of people who call it home. Stick with me, because I promise you, the higher we climb tonight, the stranger this story gets. Now, to understand why one island cost hundreds of millions of dollars, you first have to understand what most people actually mean when they say private island. Because for almost everyone, even for most celebrities, a private island is really just a very private beach. Take Johnny Depp. Back in 2004, he bought Little Halls Pond Cay, a 45-acre speck in the Bahamas, for around $3.6 million. He called it the closest thing to paradise he had ever found. Leonardo DiCaprio went further out. In 2005, he paid $1.75 million for Blackador Cay, 104 acres off the coast of Belize, with a plan to turn it into an eco-resort. And the man who started this whole trend, decades before any of them, was Marlon Brando. Back in 1965, the star of The Godfather bought Tetiaroa, a stunning Tahitian atoll of 13 islets, for a reported $200,000. But here is the thing about all three of these. As jaw-dropping as they sound, they are the entry level. A few $1 million buys you sand, palm trees, and silence. It buys you a vacation you never have to check out of. It does not buy you a kingdom. For that, you have to go up a floor. The next tier up is where the island stops being a hideaway and starts being a business. The most famous example on Earth belongs to Richard Branson, and his story is almost unfair. Back in 1978, a young Branson heard that a 74-acre island in the British Virgin Islands, called Necker, was for sale. The asking price was $6 million. Branson, who did not remotely have $6 million, lowballed them with an offer of $180,000. He was practically laughed out of the room, but a year later, the seller was desperate and he took it. $180,000 for an island now valued at around $100 million. He even married his wife Joan on that very beach. Then there is the magician, David Copperfield. In 2006, he spent $50 million on Musha Cay and 10 surrounding islands in the Bahamas. And Copperfield did something clever. He rents the place out for around $37,000 a night. Want a private fireworks show over the water? That is an extra $25,000. At this tier, the island pays for itself, but you still do not own a world. You own a very expensive hotel. So let us climb again. The third tier is the true billionaire's island, and the man who perfected it was Dietrich Mateschitz, the co-founder of Red Bull. In 2003, he bought Laukala Island in Fiji from the family of the late publishing tycoon Malcolm Forbes for around $10 million. Then he spent a rumored several hundred million more, building what many people call the finest resort in the world. And Laukala is not just a cluster of villas, it is almost a living organism. The island grows around 80% of its own food, with its own cattle farm, its own beehives, and its own orchid nursery, feeding a maximum of 89 guests, looked after by 370 staff. A single villa can run up to $45,000 a night. Want the entire island to yourself? That will be $170,000 a night. Guests like Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey have reportedly passed through. This is the country club tier. Total self-sufficiency, total privacy. And yet, even Laukala is a place you visit. It is still, in the end, a resort. To find the most expensive private island in the world, we have to take one final step, to the place where a man stopped buying an escape and started buying an entire society. His name is Larry Ellison, and in June of 2012, the co-founder of the software giant Oracle did something almost no private individual in history had ever done. He bought an island in the state of Hawaii, not a cay, not an atoll, a real inhabited Hawaiian island called Lanai. And he did not buy a corner of it. He bought 98% of the entire thing for a reported $300 million. Let that figure land for a second. $300 million. That is more than David Copperfield's islands, Necker and Lokala, all added together several times over. And for that price, Larry Ellison did not get himself a beach house. He got the sixth largest island in all of Hawaii. So what exactly does $300 million actually buy you? On Lanai, it buys you nearly 90,000 acres of land. It buys you around 400 miles of unpaved roads and trails. It buys you 2 separate Four Seasons resorts. It buys you the island once nicknamed the Pineapple Island, because for most of the 20th century, it was owned by Dole and run as the single largest pineapple plantation on the entire planet. But most staggering of all, it buys you a town, because Lanai is not some empty rock. Roughly 3,300 people live there. They have a school, a hospital, a grocery store, and homes. And with the state of Hawaii holding on to just the final 2%, that means Larry Ellison effectively owns the ground beneath almost all of it. Their water system, their utilities, most of their housing, and the resorts where a great many of them work. In plain terms, one man became the landlord, the landowner, and the biggest employer of an entire American island, all at the very same time. And who is that man? For most of the last decade, Larry Ellison has quietly been one of the richest people alive. But in September of 2025, something remarkable happened. Oracle's stock price exploded on the back of the artificial intelligence boom, and in a single day, Ellison's fortune jumped by more than $100 billion. For a brief, dizzying moment, his net worth crossed $400 billion, and he passed Elon Musk to become, however briefly, the single richest human being on the face of the earth. His fortune has swung wildly since then, sitting somewhere around $200 billion in early 2026. But just think about what that means for Lanai. The 3,000 people living on that island do not simply have a rich landlord. They have, at times, the single wealthiest landlord on the entire planet. And Larry Ellison has not exactly sat still. He has poured hundreds of millions of dollars more into the island, on top of the purchase price. He spent a reported $450 million renovating the Four Seasons at Manila Bay alone, closing it for 7 months and redesigning the lobby 3 separate times. He opened a Nobu restaurant. He built a wellness retreat called Sensei, where rooms can run around $1,700 a night. And he installed high-tech, solar-powered greenhouses to grow vegetables, with a stated dream of feeding the island and one day the world. His vision, in his own words, is to turn Lanai into a kind of health utopia. But it is worth saying that not everyone on the island shares that dream. Reporting by Bloomberg has described long-time residents who feel uneasy, living in a place where nearly every job, every home, and every decision now flows through one billionaire's companies. It is, depending entirely on who you ask, either the most ambitious private island project in history, or a cautionary tale about what happens when one person owns the ground beneath your feet. Now here is where I have to be completely honest with you, because the phrase most expensive private island is a little trickier than it first sounds. Larry Ellison's $300 million purchase is, by a wide margin, the most anyone has ever paid to own an entire island outright. But it is not the most expensive island you can walk up and buy today. That particular title belongs to a place called Rangyai, a 110-acre island near Phuket in Thailand, which has been listed for sale at $160 million. Stunning, almost undeveloped, and yes, still sitting on the market. So the most expensive island ever bought and the most expensive one currently for sale are 2 completely different places. And then there is the strangest crown of them all. Because if you measure by pure price per acre of island dirt, nothing on earth comes close to a man-made island near Miami called Indian Creek, nicknamed the Billionaire Bunker. It has just 41 homes, its own private police force, and residents that reportedly include Jeff Bezos and Tom Brady. In June of 2025, a single empty lot there, just 1.8 acres of grass, sold for $105 million in cash. Really sit with that. One empty lot, right next door to Jeff Bezos, cost a full third of what Larry Ellison paid for an entire Hawaiian island, with 2 resorts and a town thrown in. So which one is truly the most expensive private island in the world? By the total price ever paid, it is Larry Ellison's Lanai at $300 million. And honestly, I think that is the answer that matters, because Lanai is the one that reveals the real secret behind this whole obsession. At the very top of wealth, an island is not really about the sand, or the villas, or even the view. It is about a single thing that money is not supposed to be able to buy: control. On your very own island, no one can reach you, no one can photograph you, and no one can tell you no. You are not a resident, you are the rule. Marlon Brando paid $200,000 for a small taste of that feeling. Larry Ellison paid $300 million to own it completely. So here is my question for you tonight. If the money were truly no object, would you buy the quiet little beach or the whole kingdom? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this tour of the most exclusive real estate on Earth, you already know what to do to see the next one.